Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Arthur Schneier, rođen je 1930. u Beču, preživio strahote nacističkog logora u Budimpešti. Od 1947. godine živi u SAD-u. Cijeli svoj život posvetio je radu na prevazilaženju mržnje i netolerancije. Širom svijeta promoviše međuvjerski dijalog i razumijevanje, te vjerske slobode. Priznat u svijetu, za svoj rad i predanost dobio je brojne nagrade i počasne doktorate. Inače je rabin njujorške sinagoge Park East, osnivač je fondacije za priziv savjesti. Mr. Schneier, thank you very much for being with us.
Delighted.
You were born in Austria, lived under Nazi occupation, survived the concentration camp in Budapest. Then you left for the United States when you were 17. How do you recall those days today and your childhood also?
Well, born in Vienna, overnight became a social outcast, a pariah. Experienced the burning of my synagogue on Kristallnacht, which I will never forget. Was ostracized and finally had to flee Vienna to Budapest. And then in excuse me, 1944, March 19th, the Germans moved in. And within 3 months, 400,000 Jews were deported to Auschwitz and other concentration camps, including my own family, my grandparents. My other grandfather was deported from Vienna to Theresienstadt and ended up in a crematorium in Lublin, and many of my other family members. My father died when I was 6 years old before the war. So this was the beginning of book burning, ethnic cleansing, persecution, and what started with book burning ended up with the burning of human beings. So you can understand that this left a scar for the rest of my life. But fortunately, I ended up my dream to come to the land of freedom, the United States, and came to America, hardly spoke English, with a thick German-Hungarian accent, and did everything in my power to lose the accent so that I'd be a real American. And finally made up my mind that in face of injustice, if God spared me, I'm not just going to be bitter and turn against God. Ask God, where were you? Or asked humanity, why were you silent? But if I was spared, then I made a vow that I will make every effort to make sure that anything of similar nature, man's inhumanity to man, wherever it be, I would not remain silent. And that's how the Appeal of Conscience Foundation was started, 1965. I founded a foundation with Catholic, Protestant, then eventually Muslim leaders joining me in this effort to spread the struggle for religious freedom, human rights, and promote tolerance. That was the objective. And so we were active at first in the Soviet Union, where all religious groups were persecuted. Eastern Europe. My first visit to former Yugoslavia was 1985 with the Appeal of Conscience Interfaith Religious Delegation, meeting with leaders of the former Yugoslavia and religious leaders trying to advance religious freedom in this part of the world, which was restricted. Met the Grand Mufti at the time. Cherish was Mufti in Zagreb at the time. And then that's basically the history.
How would you describe political leaders of former Yugoslavia? You just mentioned you met them.
Well, actually, to some extent, you know, that Tito broke with Moscow. So, in one hand, he was very active in the non-aligned movement, and also, by comparison, in terms of persecution and religious freedom, in the former Yugoslavia was not as acute as it was in Romania or Hungary or Poland at the time and so on. So that was a bit of a difference. But still, it did not have the possibilities that we see, that we should have. This Southeast Europe and Europe is a very familiar territory for me. Yeah. But I also met, subsequently, President Tudjman, at the time the head of Croatia, President Milosevic, President Izetbegovic. I met them all. So,
could you make a comparison?
yeah. You know, when God gives you life, and I am 82, you know, I have a long history here, being part of the bloodiest century, the 20th century that I personally experienced. What brings me here at this time, although I've been to Sarajevo in 1990, 94. I remember when Sarajevo was, the Holiday Inn was full of holes from shelter. I remember 92, the 94 rather, the massacre at the market. And then I came back, you know, after the war was over. So coming back now, on one hand, it's a relief, no bloodshed, no conflict. On the other hand, one has to remember the past. One must not forget the past. And my purpose here is to stand in solidarity with the families who lost their loved ones. And I feel their anguish. I feel their pain, because I've been through it. I can identify. I know what it means to lose, you know, a father, what it means to lose a son, what it means to lose a husband. You know, you're scarred. The question is, you know, what do you do now? That's a question. And my message, basically, to the families is my own example. I was not paralyzed by the horrors of the past. I carry those horrible memories, because remember we must. On the other hand, you have to think about today and also plan for the future and guarantee a secure future for your children and grandchildren.
This interview is being filmed prior to your visit to Srebrenica. You are the first religious leader who is not a Muslim and who is going to deliver a speech at the funeral and commemoration of Srebrenica genocide victims. How symbolic is that?
It's, in a way, it proves again that we may have different faiths, but we're all human beings, and we're all God's children. And particularly, we share a patriarch, Abraham. Abraham was the patriarch for Jews, Muslims, Christians. Okay? Every human being shares. We cry. I cry as much as any other human being in the world. I laugh. I experience joy, experience happiness, I experience tragedy. So the symbolism here is that when it comes to atrocity, you make no differentiation. When it comes to man's inhumanity to man, you stand up, regardless of who the victim is. And my presence here, and I'm very honored and privileged that I was asked by the Recite Al Jazeeri church, whom I've known for many years, and we have worked together on behalf of religious freedom and tolerance in many, many places. My standing there with the families of those who perished, remembering the genocide of 17 years ago at Srebrenica, shows that we must not close our eyes or ears, regardless of what the religious belief is, to those who suffer.
You've mentioned the future, especially the future of those who suffered. In Srebrenica, especially, they suffered a lot. And what can you say to them about the future?
The future, first of all, the most important thing is bloodshed has stopped, which is very important. I know the Dayton process brought this about, and there are many flaws that need to be fixed and corrected. But at least there's no daily conflict. There's no daily loss of life. Okay. What is still here, which requires healing, first of all, one has to face the historical truth. What actually happened here? Was it the genocide? Wasn't it the genocide? Okay. Well, we have clear evidence that it was a genocide which is supported by the International Court of Justice and so on. On the other hand, you want to recognize that the neighborhood is not going to change. My favored statement, I believe, in live and let live. You want to live, but let your neighbor also live with mutual respect, okay? So the neighbors will remain neighbors. So you may as well work a relationship that will benefit all of you. And if you want the support of the international community, if you want the support of the future generations, you must make sure that this tension and conflict that may be a residue of a war is just healed and reconciliation takes place.
What would you say, what would be your reaction to those individuals or persons who deny war crimes, who deny genocide, especially in Srebrenica? What would be your message to them?
Very simple. I too face, regrettably, as some who deny the Holocaust. Yeah, there are people who deny the Holocaust. And some of them are politicians who deny the Holocaust. My answer? I'm a witness. Don't tell me it didn't exist. I was there. You were not there. I was there. I can give testimony, as I have done. Like Spielberg gathered the testimony of 50,000 Holocaust survivors. I spend the whole day telling my story, which is there, okay? I am sure that many family members who will be in Srebrenica, those who survived, have a story to tell. That's the truth. You cannot argue with the truth. The only problem that all these testimonies should be gathered while the victims are still alive, those who survive. Because we're a vanishing breed. You know, every year that goes by, fewer and fewer of those who went through World War II remain alive.
And how dangerous this denial is? Can it be a sort of a way or threat that a crime can happen again?
I think that I'd like to put it the other way. If you want to bring about reconciliation, there is no shortcut. there has to be an admission. And also, the present generation is not responsible for the brutality of what happened in the past. You cannot hold them accountable. And I must say that Germany, Federal Republic of Germany, has really done a superb job in reconciliation with Poles, with neighboring countries, with French, with the Jewish community, by saying, yes, the Third Reich did perpetrate these crimes. They don't deny it. And whether it's Adenauer or now Chancellor Angela Merkel, actually it was very nice. Angela Merkel made a statement very clearly when one of the leaders of Iran denied the Holocaust. He said, wait a minute, don't deny the Holocaust because the Third Reich perpetrated the Holocaust. Okay? So I think that's a very important point in terms of, in order to have reconciliation and conciliation and coexistence, the historical truth has to prevail, and also justice ultimately prevails. Ultimately, justice prevails. The truth comes out sooner or later.
After all the atrocities which happened during the Second World War, especially Holocaust, why couldn't we prevent crimes in Europe?
Well, I must say that the international community was slow in responding to the atrocities. And we have a current situation in Syria where you have the government of Syria actually pursuing a terrible response.
Does the international community, Organization of United Nations, do they have to be that slow, their response?
Ideally, they should not be slow. But again, and this was a classic case in the former Yugoslavia. The intervention was much delayed. And also, what's very important to remember, that silence on the part of the international community only encourages the perpetrators. So silence, there's a lesson to be learned also from Srebrenica, from Auschwitz. Do not remain silent in face of injustice. Do not remain silent when you actually are confronted with the brutality that man is capable of. Yeah.
What would you say, what is the mistake? What generates the crime? What can be identified as roots of an evil?
The root of the evil is nationalism. And that means you do not respect the other as a fellow human being, entitled to his or her heritage, his or her language, his or her beliefs. That causes the confrontation that eventually leads to that kind of brutality.
Who carries the biggest responsibility for preventing the conflicts and atrocities? Well,
interestingly enough, the United Nations in 2005 adopted a resolution called Protection of the Innocents. I don't know whether you're familiar with it. Protection of the Innocents, which is really an outgrowth to some of the tragedies that occurred. Okay? So the responsibility rests not only with political leadership, it also rests with the religious leadership and ultimately with the people. And if you can have a sense of not only feeling, but if I feel your pain, then I really understand you. If I can share your joy, I really understand you. That's how you build bridges. That's how you build mutual understanding and respect for one another.
But do we feel the pain of another person enough?
That has a lot to do with the sensitivity of the individual. I feel the pain because I've been through it. That's why I'm here.
How much hypocrisy do you see among political leaders at the highest level? The modern world, is it more driven by economics and other interests than via the peace?
You know, I hate to generalize. There are some political leaders who practice realpolitik, who may have a different standard for one issue, another standard for another issue. But I think that basically men and women who dedicate themselves to public life and public service, really the underlying motivation, particularly today, is they want to serve the well-being and the welfare of their people.
And another question, is advocating the peace in close connection with interfaith dialogue?
Historically, there were many, many religious conflicts. I attended, for instance, a meeting October 27, convened by Pope Benedict, whom I had the privilege of hosting in my synagogue, first time ever a Pope visited, with 300 leaders from all over the world, Hindu, Buddhist, not just Christians, Muslims, and Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, some other faith communities represented, all trying to emphasize the importance of religious leaders working together, not to become the problem, but the solution to many of the issues that mankind is facing today, whether it's poverty, whether it's the environment, whether it's humanitarian rescue, whatever. It also needs the input of a moral religious approach. And this is where interfaith action, not just talk, action makes a difference.
And how difficult it is to make them do something, not only talk, and how difficult it is to get them to talk together?
Well, I'll tell you, I graduated the talking stage because I started interfaith dialogue in the 1960s when I was considered an anachronism, okay? So I graduated that. But I can tell you that interfaith action, when I brought the religious leaders from former Yugoslavia to Switzerland, and they issued together a declaration calling for the halt of the bloodshed and saying a crime perpetrated in the name of religion is the greatest crime against religion, that's action. Or when you have a humanitarian tragedy like the earthquake in Turkey, or a flood disaster in China, religious leaders, through their charities, one important task of a religious community is charity. And that goes across, it could be Muslim, could be Christian, Jew, Buddhist. So when you have disasters, whether it's a flood, earthquake, humanitarian tragedy, religious communities join together, or in Haiti, done a great job. So religious leaders can do a lot, and they should be doing a lot. And fortunately, we have reached a stage today where we have graduated, you know, just from the, I mean, there's still some radical extremists who do not believe in coexistence. But ultimately, I think those of us who believe in what I call live and let live, we will prevail and not the extremists.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
A vama hvala, poštovani gledalci. Ovu emisiju možete pronaći i na internetskoj stranici aljazeera.net/Balkans. Lijep pozdrav.
Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?